Hello, Pirates. Welcome to week 4 of e-learning. You guys have taken your test on evolution. So as we finish up that unit, we're going to start looking at the body systems. In your notebooks, you guys should have printed out, if you can, Unit 7 vocabulary. And then on page 133, you should have set up a title page for human body systems. And your essential question this unit is we're going to look at how the cells function to create organ systems in the human body. And it's set up kind of strange. There are a few systems we go over, mostly focused on the nervous system, the reproductive system, and the immune system. And oddly, a few things about blood vessels. And we are really just going to start with the neurons in the brain first. So today's topic, after you guys finish your title page, and that information is in Schoology, is we're going to look at neurons. So if you're able to print out some neurons, you guys can print out, they're on a page of 3. Cut out one, send the other 2 to your friends in the mail, send them a letter to let them know you missed them, send it to your grandma. And we're going to look at neurons. And today we're going to look at how do neurons transmit signals in the nervous system. So this right here is a cell, and it looks a little bit different than a typical cell. This cell looks like it's reaching out and branching out to collect information and to pass information in a signal along. So this is a basic kind of generic neuron. And so in order for the neuron to receive information, and they receive all kinds of information. You guys have pressure receptors, temperature receptors, taste buds are neurons, that are taking in sensory information, hearing, smelling, your eyes taking in light. So you have so many different types of neurons taking in information, and they send it to your peripheral nerves, to your brain. You have neurons that decide what to do that information and send back, a response. So when we look at this cell, the typical cell that you guys are used to looking at is the main part of the cell at the top. And so we're going to start with how the neuron receives the signals. And the neuron is going to receive the signal, and the signal is going to go this way. Okay, so here it's branching out to receive information. And the information that's going to stimulate the neuron to neuron, are these little chemicals called neurotransmitters. I'm already making spelling errors. Neurotransmitters. So you guys have neurotransmitters that send in signals, unless they're the original cell to get the information. They're going to get other kinds of receptors, but there's something that's going to receive the signal, and that's the dendrites. And so the dendrites are these things that are sticking out from the cell, and here they are, just like branches of a tree stretching out to receive information. So you guys have almost like these webs of dendrites trying to pick up and gather information about the world around you. If you think about it while you're coloring them, think about, do you feel temperature right now? Do you hear anything? Can you smell anything? Can you taste anything? No, I don't know. Hopefully you're in a place that has wonderful sounds and smells. All right. Gotta get those essential oils, right? All right, so these are dendrites. So the dendrites are going to be what actually receives the information. So these are dendrites, dendrites. And what dendrites do is they receive the signals from other neurons and our environment. So from the environment and from other neurons in our body, they're kind of playing like a relay, like one hits and signals the other one. And like I said, you guys are receiving informations about temperature, pressure receptors, You know, think like if you push your hand onto, you know, your paper, is it a light touch, a firm? You know, you can feel the different pressure. Are you sitting on a soft chair? Are you sitting on a hard surface? So things like temperature, pressure, sound, you know, like I said, taste, smell, pain receptors. You guys also feel pain. So that is the first part of the neuron. So the neurotransmitter or the signal is going to trigger the dendrites. That information is then going to make its way into the cell body, and the cell body is just the main part of the cell. And the cell body is sometimes referred to as the soma. So this is the cell body. And in the cell body, this is where all the normal stuff in the cell is, like the organelles, the mitochondria, the nucleus. So this is the part of the neuron that contains the organelles. So we have the organelles there, the Golgi apparatus, the endoplasmic reticulum, and every cell has a nucleus. So number 3 here is pointing at the nucleus. And if you guys remember, the nucleus job and role in the cell is the nucleus is the control center. So this is the control center of the cell. And this would be where we would find the DNA. So the control center is going to be where the DNA is located. Now, if that dendrite's taken enough information and the control center agrees that we want to send the information on to the next neuron, then it's going to start moving down what we call the axon. So number 4 is the axon. And like I said, the information is traveling from the front part of the cell here where the dendrites are back this way. And the axon actually goes right through the center here. So all these little things, this little thing that looks kind of like a tail moving along, this is what we refer to as the axon. So this is the axon. And the axon is going to transmit the signal from the dendrites to the axon terminals at the end. So this is going to transmit the signal. And this is the nervous system signal. It's kind of like an electrical signal. So it's going to transmit the signal from the dendrites to the axon terminals. It's going to send that signal down. Now, when we look at the axon in some parts of our body is wrapped in fat. And the part that's wrapped in fat is just on the outside. So all these little things on the outside, they're actually wrapped around the axon, kind of like if you wrapped, it sounds kind of funny, but if you wrapped a crescent roll, like a Pillsbury crescent roll, around a hot dog and made, I don't know, what do they call them? Like pigs in a blanket. So when you wrap the axon, you actually wrap around the axon with this fat cell that's kind of like a crescent Pillsbury roll. And when that axon is wrapped, it causes the nerve signal to actually skip down the neuron. And so the signal skips along between the spaces, and it causes the information to move more quickly. So if the information moves more quickly down the axons, then you actually receive your nervous signals faster and you can have a faster response. These cells, these fat cells, number 5, they're called the myelin sheath, or they're called Schwann cells. So number 5 is the myelin sheath. And these are fat cells that speed up signals. So they kind of insulate neurons and they speed up signals. So they speed up the signal speed so that the nervous signal moves much more quickly. Now, if someone's had a nerve injury, sometimes their nerves become demyelinated and the myelin never grows back, which means that their brain or their peripheral nerves might respond a little more slowly. Now, something else that's also interesting about these cells, I'm just going to put here, they're called Schwann cells, is that these are also the cells in the brain that usually are the cause of brain tumors. So when someone has a tumor in their nervous system, most of the time it's actually not the nerve cell that's dividing uncontrollably. It's actually these fat cells that wrap themselves around the neurons. And so when people have a brain tumor, it's usually a big blob of fat cells in their brain. Fortunately, these types of tumors, a schwannoma, is also usually benign, but it can pinch the nerve, depending on the location. All right, the last part of the neuron is called the axon terminal, and the axon terminal is at the end. So the final thing to label here is the axon terminal. So we have axon terminals. And terminal means the end. So like the terminal at the end of your flight, you land and you go through the terminal. And so what the axon terminals do is they release these neurotransmitters, these chemicals. And these new neurotransmitters are then going to send the signal to the next neuron. So they release neurotransmitters to stimulate the next neuron. Now, if we look at our diagram up here, in our diagram, these are the end of the neuron. So the axon terminals go right here to the end. And what happens is if the neuron decides to send the signal on down the line, then these will release more neurotransmitters to stimulate the next neuron. Now, these neurotransmitters, they actually connect to the next neuron and then they get reabsorbed. And you guys may have heard of some different neurotransmitters, things like dopamine, serotonin, glutamate. There's something called GABA. A lot of these things cause us to feel different ways. So you may have heard of them before, especially in substances or for medications. All right, so this is neurons. I did link a couple of videos for you guys to look at them.